Even physical symptoms can be an indication that your mind is not in a good place, that your emotions are not in a good place.
And when you mentioned like grieving and stuff, I went through an issue. I went through in my past when my dad passed. I mean, when I tell you, like from the time he passed, uh, it was like my whole life changed.
But here's the thing: the framework of school has not changed.
Hmm.
Like if you think about why why schools were created, the structure and the format of schools
It hadn't
back,
changed.
it hadn't changed.
Yeah.
And I think in order for us to really address children's developmental needs, we have to revamp the whole framework of education because there's a lot of things that are not being taught.
I'm Tiffany Storey with Storey House Counseling and Consulting, and I am here with Studio Life After Dark. Storey House Counseling, we offer counseling and coaching services. We also offer wellness consulting with schools and businesses. If you want to follow us on social media, check us out on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook at SHCCAL.
Studio Life After Dark. Studio Life Live in the dark. Studio Life After Dark.
Hey, yo, Fiji got this song.
Tune in, it's about to start. Studio Life After Dark. Just as soon as the night spark. Studio Life After Dark. Need tips to the chicks hard. Studio Life After Dark. Stock market tips, hottest car. Studio Life After Dark. Tune in, it's about to start. Studio Life After Dark. Just soon as the night spark. Studio Life After Dark. Need tips to
Yeah,
the
we
chicks
coming to you live from Studio Life After Dark. Today we have a special guest in the building. This topic I've been wanting to talk about for a long time. It took finding the right person for us to sit down and talk about it. Today we're going to discuss mental health, amongst other things. Today, y'all welcome in Miss Tiffany Storey.
Thank you.
All right, so Tiffany, real quick, just give us a quick introduction of what you do and talk to us about what your practice does.
So I'm a licensed professional counselor, supervisor, which means that the supervisor means that I've been in practice for a while. I've been in practice at least 5 years,
Okay.
and I'm at a place where I'm approved to supervise and guide newly licensed therapists.
Okay.
When you first get licensed and come into the field, you have to be under the supervision. So it just means I'm an experienced therapist. I personally provide individual and group counseling. I also do what I call executive and strategic coaching, which is not something I originally went into practice doing, but it's just kind of had people coming to me asking for assistance. I do wellness consulting, and then I consult with schools and businesses. So if it's a school looking to implement a counseling program, or they're just looking for some training and support for educators and administrative staff on how to navigate some mental health concerns or disruptive behaviors in the school environment, I will come in and consult and train and develop teachers. And then I also, with businesses, if you have a high turnover or if you have employees who just are not being productive or not beating performance goals, I kind of come in and kind of get a gauge of what the culture looks like and really help talk people through why aren't you getting the best performance and the most productivity out of the people that work for your company.
Yeah, that's dope. Yeah, I never even thought about professionals going into the workforce,
Yeah.
explaining things and trying to find, I guess, the root of the problem, whatever it is they're having. But as far as the schools, how often do you do that, going to schools? And
So I actually have a contract with a local charter school that just opened up here in Bessemer.
Okay.
And so it's their first year. And so myself and another therapist that works for me, we are structuring a school counseling program. So she primarily provides counseling to the students. And then I primarily provide EAP support, which is Employee Assistance Program, for the teachers who may be experiencing mental or emotional distress or have gone through something they feel like they need support with. And then I offer professional development. And so we're there. I'm there 2-3 days a week, depending on what trainings and things we got going on. But as the school develops and expands, eventually the goal is to have someone there most of the week.
Right. So I did a little research, and I noticed like you've been actually in the field for almost 20 plus years as being a licensed counselor, right?
So no, 10 years for counseling, but
Okay.
I have been in like working with communities and families for almost 20 years.
Okay.
So initially I started in with early childhood education, like working at daycares and things like that. I've worked with like programs like Upward Bound. So I've always worked with children and families in some type of community engagement framework. But as a licensed mental health counselor, I've only been in the field for about 10 years.
Okay. But I mean, that's still a good amount of time to get a lot of knowledge in
Yes.
and put it out. But I did want to talk about, specifically on mental health, on how important it is and amongst blacks, because sometimes we tend to avoid things, we kind of overlook things. We don't want to talk to people about certain things that we may be going through. So that was one of the reasons why we brought you on, so you can kind of spread the word and kind of give a better insight, because, we'll forget things, we'll ignore things. We wait to the last minute and then we try to fix things,
Sure.
So I guess just kind of give us kind of let people know how important it is to, like, I guess, pay attention to your mental health, and what advice can you give them on it?
So I think the best example to start with is a common cold.
Okay.
So I'm gonna start there. A lot of times, we know that we're sick because we have symptoms like a cough or a runny nose or congestion, right? And often we may not feel, even if we don't feel sick, we know that we're not feeling our best, right? For many of us, we'll press past those symptoms. Other people may look into taking medication or treating the symptoms. They're treating the cough or they're treating the congestion, right? But that doesn't necessarily address the root of the problem. The cough is a symptom. It is not the actual problem.
Okay.
And so some people, if it doesn't get better, if the cough doesn't go away or their mucus changed color, a lot of times that prompts them to go into the doctor to say, hey, I'm feeling this way. I've tried to treat it and it's not getting better. And the doctor then gives them some type of diagnosis. Oh, you got the flu, or you have bronchitis, you have pneumonia, right? And then they give you treatment that treats the actual root of the problem, right? Not just the symptoms.
Okay.
Well, when we look at our mental health, a lot of times we're seeing symptoms of us not being in a good mental and emotional space. And sometimes those symptoms are physical, and sometimes those symptoms are behavioral. Like from a behavioral standpoint, spazzing out on somebody or completely shutting down and not saying anything, right, to other people. A lot of times those can be behaviors that something is going on, right? Or when we talk about physical symptoms, being fatigued all the time, having aches and pains all the time, being nauseous all the time. Sometimes we dismiss those as it's something I ate or something, but if you're under a high level of stress, if you're grieving, if you've had some traumatic event like, being abused or seeing someone being killed, even physical symptoms can be an indication that your mind is not in a good place, that your emotions are not in a good place.
And when you mentioned like grieving and stuff, I went through an issue. I went through in my past when my dad passed. I mean, when I tell you, like, from the time he passed, it was like my whole life changed.
Yeah.
The way I felt, the way I interacted with people, didn't want to be bothered. Like, I'm a social person, but it affected me a lot because I didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
End up going to the doctor, got prescribed medicine. I even got a little counseling, but I didn't realize how much it affected me until that happened, because a lot of people may not know, like, I guess mental issues can be emotional. You know what I mean? And I don't know. It was just different for me. It caught me off guard. You know what I mean? So
a lot of times, how we respond to grief and loss has a lot to do with, childhood. It has a lot to do with our environment, right? The messages we receive from our parents, the messages we receive from our teachers, the messages we receive from our community about how we can express how we feel, right? So mental health, like you said, it can manifest in even your emotions. When we talk about severe mental illness like bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, a lot of times they attribute that to being like some type of chemical imbalance, or it can come from suppression of the trauma, suppression of emotions and feelings as a result of trauma you've experienced. So, if I've experienced some type of physical harm, like, being sexually victimized or being abused, physically abused, and I never address with my emotions, it causes somewhat of a fracture in the mind, right?
how do you address with those emotions though?
Well, it's like, using a restroom. If your bladder is full, the only way that you can alleviate the pressure in your bladder is by using the restroom. It has to come out, right? A lot of times we don't look at emotions like that. We feel like we can just suppress or compartmentalize, just keep tucking things away. Whether you express those emotions or not, they're going to come out, right? It's like taking, if I ate a banana right now and I enclosed it in this water bottle, it's not going to stop it from rotting, right? And it's only so long that this lid can contain the smell of the rock, because all those gases and all those things that break down and decompose that banana, that process is going to happen, right? So that's the same with things we experience. At some point, it has to be processed. It has to come out. And so the more you tuck it away and the more you compartmentalize and don't deal with it, eventually you see that in people being violent and people being angry and people being sad or people being highly anxious. Those are symptoms that something you've experienced has not been properly addressed.
People need to let it out. They need to talk about it. They need to,
Yeah, the only way to get past is go through.
Right. And then you spoke on violence. I thought about that too, because there's a lot of violence in all communities, but we do have a lot of them in our community, in the Black community. So I kind of think like, what would help us to kind of cut down on violence? I know we probably can't completely stop violence though, but maybe just like when you spoke on people not letting things out. And people get so aggravated, it's like a ticking time bomb. They just blow up and then things happen. So I don't know.
It's complicated. So here you got to think about, we have multiple things happening in our community. I mean, even now the country is so divided. So you have oppression, right? We have issues in our community that dates back to slavery, right? Things that never got addressed. There was no space to grieve when you was a slave, right? There was no space to take a few days off because you lost your child. Your child was ripped away and sold to another family. You didn't get an off day. You had to be up with the sun. You was out all day picking cotton or doing whatever your job was to do because you were property, right? And so science has proven that some aspect of that trauma has passed down from generation to generation through our DNA, right? If I'm a mother that is pregnant and I am in a constant state of fear or I'm in a constant state of stress, my baby shares all of the chemicals that my body is experiencing. And so I might produce an anxious baby. I might produce a baby that's less likely to be soothed because of that. And so when we look at anger and a lot of the violence that we have in our community, it's deeper than just a whole bunch of people who don't express their feelings. We have intergenerational trauma that passes from one generation to the next. Then we have oppression. We have these systems put in place to keep us poor or to keep us illiterate or to keep us, in a box. And so then you have parents who have experienced either some type of physical abuse, or they've been a witness to violence, and it does something to mind to see someone else be killed in front of you. So it's very layered and very complicated, but I think the first thing is just educating people about why you feel the way you feel. You know, you don't know what you don't know. So think about driving a car. Like when you first get a car, you know, you don't know nothing about an engine or a transmission, or somebody has to teach you, right? So you might get in a car, and if a car is rattling and you never heard a normal car, you just think that's part of the car,
That's
right?
part of it, yeah.
But when someone says this noise is what a regular engine sounds like, and this noise is what a broken engine sounds like, immediately your mind becomes aware. So when you hear that noise, you know this car is broken, right? It's the same thing with mental health. You first have to know what healthy mental health looks like and what negative mental health looks like. So just education. That's why when we were slaves, you were not privy to learn how to read, because having access to education allowed you to be able to think complex and know that what you was experiencing wasn't right. Right. And so when we think about how to address those problems, the first step is just awareness.
Awareness. Yeah, I think that's important. As far as like, let's say, we're just gonna switch it up a little bit. As far as like eating and sleeping, how does that affect your mental health?
It's very important. So we're a whole person, like, right? Our body is a system, right? And so a lot of people think, when they think of mental health, they think just the brain, but mental health is highly connected to your digestive system. So if you think of like a family, right? And a lot of us grew up in single parent households, you know, but I grew up in a household with two parents. So if you grew up in a household with two parents, you at least get to understand this, or seen a household with two parents. You got the daddy, right? The daddy might be the person that makes the final decision, right? He might be the voice that says, this is what we're doing, and he's seen as the head of the house. But everybody know that mama runs the house, right? And if mama ain't happy, the whole house ain't happy, right?
You're exactly right.
It's the same thing. The brain is the daddy of your body, but your stomach is your mama, right? And so when we consume foods that have no nutritional value, that are full of toxins, the stomach says, I don't feel good. I'm not happy. And it communicates to the brain that it feels unhappy. And then the brain tells the body that we're sick or we're at dis-ease, right? Like disease is just dis-ease, right? And so when we think about our mental well-being, you have to include the stomach, because the stomach sends communication to the brain about how it feels. And when it comes to sleep, I mean, science can tell you if you don't have sleep, that after a certain point, the brain begins to malfunction.
It's like a domino effect, I guess. You don't eat, you don't sleep, you know, you get stressed, you get tired, you get aggravated. All of those things.
You become delusional. Like anything of use requires rest, right? Anything. So that's just like our cell phones. You know, if we're overusing, we ain't shutting down the tabs, we're not giving it a rest, the battery dies. Right? Everything that we use requires a rest and a restoration period. Putting it on the charger gives it more energy. You have to give it a rest. Now, some of us will use it while it's on the charger, but it charges slower, right? So everything that we use that functions, has some high level of function, requires some period of rest.
Yeah, I think we should take more preventative stages when it comes to just ourselves. You know, a lot of time, and I hate to say us as blacks, but a lot of time it's us. We tend to wait till things happen, and then we want to try to hurry up and fix it. You know, when it's scarred or broken, or, you know, I can understand why we do that. We wait till things happen, and then it's like we're trying to fix it instead of doing a preventative stage. It's trying to, you know, prolong things.
Well, again, I think some of it is lack of awareness. Like if you didn't grow up in a household where people prioritize their self and their, you know, and engaged in self-care or prioritize their well-being, then you don't know to do that, right? Everybody, I think all of us have some point in our life encountered a grandmother, a mother, a grandfather. They worked. That's all they did. You know what I'm saying? They worked, and when they wasn't working, they was at the church working. They was volunteering their time for this, right? And then even when their kids got grown, they was taking in grandkids or trying to help somebody in the neighborhood. Like we have not been educated about how to prioritize ourselves. And then again, that goes all the way back to slavery. Like that wasn't a thing for us. So I think a lot of it is rooted in lack of awareness. And then we've created this culture that we are not deserving of that. You know what I'm saying? I feel like all of it can be rooted back to oppression. You weren't deserving to get a break. Even when your feet was bleeding, even if you birthed a new baby, you was in the fields, right? It didn't matter. So we have generations and generations of people who were told that taking care of themselves was not important, that they had to put the needs of themselves and community before them. And so I think rechanging or rewriting the narrative, which is actually my tagline for my business, rewrite your narrative, transform your life.
Okay.
We all have our own story, right? And a lot of times we don't see ourselves as the author of that story, but at some point you have to change this perspective that I get to write my narrative. And if this narrative, being a victim of trauma, being a victim of this, being oppressed, does not fit the way I would like for my life to look, then how do I rewrite that narrative for myself? How do I change the trajectory of my life?
I like that. Yeah, I like that. So tell us a little bit about your business that you have.
So I think I have multiple therapists on my team. So like I said, I do the counseling, I do coaching, I consult with schools. But right now, I'm primarily working with therapists who want to serve underserved. Okay. And so what that means is if you come from a community where you are not prioritized or where you're not important, we want to provide mental health counseling to you or mental health support to you. And so I'm working with a team of therapists that we're focused on choosing those people. I have a Latino therapist that works for me. He's bilingual, so he sees clients that speak Spanish and English. And he's a male. He's like a unicorn right now, especially in this area, because first of all, you're not finding too many Latino therapists. And so I think it's great where my practice is. We have a large Latino community. We have a large Latino community in Birmingham and the surrounding areas, greater Birmingham area. So I also have a therapist who is in the process of becoming a psychologist. So she'll be able to do some of those special assessments, which is really great. And she specializes with children. I focus on adults, and I'm in the process right now of onboarding 2 more team members.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. So I want to bring up, and this is, I guess, a personal question for me. When it comes to mental health and, taking care of yourself, self-care, I take medication for anxiety, panic attacks. Can you speak on the difference, someone who's taking medications versus someone who's not taking medication? Like, is it preferred, or is that,
I think it's different for each person. There are some people who their issue is so severe they need medication, right? I am of personal belief, right? This is just my personal opinion, that we're not intended to be on medication forever, right? Medication is, the goal is stabilization, to stop this snowball effect of what's happening with you. And I know that it's become a societal norm, especially in Western culture, to just pop a pill for everything. But when you have symptoms or when you're experiencing these type of experiences, it means that something is not right. What we don't do enough of in Western society is actually figuring out how to fix what's happening with us, right? I am anxious because my dad was an addict. My dad struggled with addiction his entire, my entire life, right? When I was conceived, he may have been in rehab, but my dad struggled with addiction. My mom struggled with anxiety, whether she knew that or not. I've learned a lot since I've become an adult about my mom's family dynamic, right? So you have these two, you have put them in a household where there's dysfunction, right? My dad is struggling with addiction. My mom is triggered by that. My dad's using all the money, and the household becomes disruptive. So I grew up with anxiety. Not only did I, you know, I'm born with that, but my environment induces or produces anxiety for me. Not just me, but my siblings as well. I think the difference for me not being on a medication is, for one, I think when I was conceived and born, the relationship with my parents was in a much better space than when my sisters, my younger sister was conceived, right? And so how anxiety manifests in me is less severe than how it may manifest in one of my siblings, right? But then you add trauma onto that, right? If I had experienced trauma, then how harmful is that trauma? Was I sexually assaulted? Was I physically abused? Okay, so all those things put me in this state. The medication is supposed to help me function, right? But the goal is for me to either process those things, that trauma, right? Regulate my nervous system, right? And then eventually the goal is for me to be able to come off that medication. It's like this is the example I use when my clients are apprehensive. Okay. When you go to school, we all get a teacher.
Right.
When the teacher gets sick, who do they call?
The parent.
When a child gets sick and the teacher has to take off for a few days, who do they call? I'm sorry, to manage the classroom.
Oh, a substitute?
A substitute.
Right.
Right. But the substitute is not your permanent replacement, right?
Right.
The substitute is a fill-in.
Right.
Right? Eventually the teacher is going to come back, and if that teacher doesn't come back, there's a permanent replacement, right? When we think about our imbalances, medication is mostly a substitute. It's there until we can figure out how to regulate you, or till we can figure out.
What up, y'all? I'm your host, Juiceman Jay.
It's your boy Drew D, the word man.
And it's the one and only Jewel. And you're here with us at Studio Life After Dark.
Man, Studio Life After Dark is the hottest podcast in the city.
We the opinion of the people, man. We the opinion of the people, man. We really just putting it out there, man.
And don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms at Studio Life After Dark.
Man, y'all can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and also YouTube.
Hello.
What's missing and help the body start back producing that hormone or that chemical that it's not making, right? It's never intended to be a long-term replacement, but we want the easy route, right? And so that's my perspective on it. But for some people, if they're willing to make some hard decisions, depending on what their issue is, they can go through it without medication. I might not recommend someone who's struggling with delusions, who might be schizophrenic or paranoia, to not take medication, right? Because it could be extremely harmful, not just for them, but everyone that has to exist with them. Right. Versus someone who may be struggling with a little depression, right? Their depression may not be causing them to be suicidal. Their depression may not be causing them to not get out of bed, but they're depressed nevertheless, right?
Yeah, some of that medication, it actually says that you may feel suicidal. You may, it's crazy, but I guess we probably just need to be aware of some of the natural things we can do versus medication, considered, just so we won't have to be on medication. Like, what's some of the natural things that we can do? What's some of the, I guess, old home remedies, that we could do to kind of meditation, yoga, some of the things. I've even tried meditation,
Yeah. So there's a couple things here. You have to be very disciplined a lot of times, and very, not just disciplined, but committed to making the necessary changes to avoid having to go a certain route. Okay. Right? So I'll use my aunt my mom's older sister was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she had the cancer removed from her body. They wanted to do chemo. She did not want to do chemo, and she asked the doctor, was there an alternative, and could she avoid cancer coming back? And the doctor pretty much told her, you're going to have a life that's stress-free. You can't put any stress on your body. So working and doing all these things that cause you to be in this state of dysregulation, you have to avoid that in order to be healthy. Right. And my uncle was like, if that's all it takes, she ain't never got to go to work another day in her life.
Right.
My aunt has not worked since. Okay. My aunt never had chemotherapy. My aunt is my mom's older sister. She's probably the healthiest out of all of them because she's lived a life where he made sure that she ate good. The doctor emphasized eating well and physical exercise and low stress. My aunt has done that. My aunt is in her mid 80s, and she has had less health issues than her siblings, right? Mm-hmm. So when we think about mental health, you can do medication. A lot of it is a dysregulation of our nervous system. Of course, some of us have had physical trauma. Mm-hmm. So if you've ever been like physically beaten, you've had your head hit, well, because there's a permanent injury, you may need medication. Right. Now, to what extent is controlled by your sleep? Are you eating foods that are actually nutritious? We eat for enjoyment, but food is fuel. Right. It is intent. It's like gas for our bodies, right? Like gas for a vehicle makes the vehicle run. And you could if I put diesel in a tank that's not designed for diesel, it's gonna shut down, right? So it's the same thing with our bodies. It's like we are a regular engine that's designed for regular ethanol, and we putting diesel in our body, right? So your diet is important, your sleep is important, and then there are herbs. Drugs come from somewhere, right? A lot of times there's these natural herbs and different things that come from the earth that drugs, that's the base of the drug. You know what I'm saying? So there's also different herbs and different things that you can do that treats different things. And so because I'm not a doctor, I don't want to recommend anything specific because I don't want anybody to be like, that lady on the podcast and all I got to do is go down there and get some St. John's wort. Right. But I say talk to your doctor, and if you have a doctor that's not educated about natural alternatives, like my body is very sensitive to medication, so I'm very reluctant to just take medication. And I've communicated with my doctor that this is not an option for me. Is there some healthier alternatives before I can go there? And if you don't have a doctor that's educated, then I say look around and shop around and interview the doctor. Right. Like, hey, are you trained in some holistic or homeopathic or natural alternatives in treating everyday issues? How can I regulate my blood sugar if I'm not at the place where my body's not making insulin, but I'm pre-diabetic? What are some things and what are some natural things that I can do to help me not get to that space, right? And so I think it's important to just find a doctor that understands the value of holistic health.
Yeah, I love the natural route. I mean, I try to do anything I can naturally without having to take medication. I just think we need to probably know more about it. We need to probably practice it more in general, because we always tend to run for a substitute or something that's like a quick fix, whether it's drinking. Some people drink to kind of get away, erase problems in their head, or, and do other things. But as far as like just eating right, like you said, making sure we're drinking water, which is very important.
Sleeping
good, yeah. I try to get me 8 hours. As busy as my schedule is, I try to at least get 7 or 8 hours though. And I can tell it's important because I feel different once I get enough sleep. There's certain days like I've missed my medication and I still feel fine. And I know it's probably still in my body, because I've been taking it for a period of time. But the natural things I try to educate myself and I try to learn more of. So I just think it's important for people to try to do things more naturally. And like you said, if it's, I guess at a certain, you got something kind of severe, then maybe medication is the way to go.
Yeah. And I think it's just reframing or reevaluating how we view things. Like we talked about signs and symptoms, right? Like what you drive a newer model car or older car?
A newer model car.
Okay, so with these newer model cars, there's sensors everywhere. It beep for everything,
Yeah.
right? If you about to get in the lane, if there's a
Yeah.
car coming, if you getting too close to the car in front of you,
It's
it
gonna
beep,
let you know.
right?
Yeah.
So if you hear something beep, do you just keep going or do you
No,
pay
You're
attention?
gonna pay attention.
Right.
Yeah. You're
Else
gonna react to it.
yep. Or else your nice new vehicle may be wrecked, right? Our body gives us indications that we need to do something. And I think
And we ignore those sometimes, though. Sometimes people ignore those.
yes, they're warning signals. And I think what people really need to be mindful of is that you are the expert on you. You know when this is how I normally feel, and then when I start feeling this way, this is unusual for me.
Right.
Now, you have some people who have always been anxious or have always been depressed or have always been this way for as long as they can remember because of the environments they grew up in, and it feels unusual for them to be happy. And that's a whole nother thing, right? But for most of us, we've had, for many people, we've had at least moments where we know that nothing's wrong and we feel good, even if it's short-lived, right? So if you're not feeling what it feels like to be stable, not anxious, not paranoid, not feeling sad, not feeling angry, if you've had those moments, then when you feel that way, listen to your body because you're the expert on you. Even as a therapist, I'm a therapist, and people think they come to therapy and therapists is going to tell them what's wrong with them and tell them what to do. That's not what our job is. Actually, that's unethical. It's really a disservice to a client. Our job is to be a sounding board and a guide to basically help you hear and see yourself, help you hear and see what it is that you want for yourself and what you don't want for yourself. So I'm more like a mirror. You know what I'm saying? Think of like the evil witch in Snow White, like mirror, mirror on the wall. That's kind of what we are, but we're not telling you just what you want to hear. You know what I'm saying? We're telling you what you're saying. And a lot of times when you come and say, I'm tired of this, and I can't stand this person and they hate me. My job is to repeat back to you in words that you can really hear. And a lot of times when you do that, a person will be like, that's not what I mean. That's not what I said. It's like, okay, well, say that again. And then when you say it back, they're looking at you like, that's what I'm saying.
I said, right?
Yeah, that is how I feel, right? It's just to help you with clarity.
So you deal with a lot of relationship type counseling also? Like, or is it, what's the percentage of say of?
So I don't specifically. So just like you have the foot doctor, the eye doctor, we have specializations in counseling. So there's a specialization for marriage and family therapists.
Okay.
They go to school for that. They get extra training. Now we all get trained on it, but with a marriage and family therapist, they get additional training and they get a certification or licensure in that area.
Gotcha.
Now, do I work with couples? Yes. I tell couples I am not a marriage therapist, but I'm in relationship, right? I've been married for almost 18 years. This summer it'll be 18 years. So I can tell you a little bit about marriage. And that don't mean just because I've been married 18 years, I've done it well or it's a good marriage. But I feel like me and my husband have a really healthy marriage, right? We've also gone to marriage counseling as a way to make sure that we can stay married, right? So I do work with couples, but I work primarily with individuals. However, I will sometimes have clients who come and a huge stressor for them is their marriage. And so I may do marriage sessions. I have a couple I work with, two couples actually that I work with right now. I see them individually, but occasionally we do marriage sessions. Now, some people frown on that because they feel like there's no way for you to be unbiased, but I do my best to separate. When a client comes in, it's all about her. When the wife comes in, it's all about her. When the husband comes in, it's all about the husband. When the conversations begin to be about the same thing and they're both distressed, it's like, maybe we should sit down and do a couple session. Because I can help you navigate this, but I think if I'm hearing it as a therapist from both sides, it's like, okay, this may warrant a few marriage sessions.
Okay. I know a lot of people may not know Mental Health Awareness Month is the month of May. Do y'all have anything going on special for that month? Or
so we're going to be participating in a mental health day with the city of Birmingham and a nonprofit called Nurture. There's another Black female therapist in the Birmingham area, and she has a private practice and a nonprofit, and so her nonprofit partners with the city. So we'll be doing that. I'm also doing some stuff with the school where for the kids where we help them establish their own mental health campaign. And so for the month of May, we're doing Mindful May, which is teaching them alternative mindfulness practices outside of medicine and some type of product that they can do, because a lot of times during the summer they don't have access to those adults that have been supports for them through the year. So we got a lot of kids that we see for counseling, and we make sure we touch every single kid that has come through that school in some form or fashion. You know, we're talking to them about mental health. If they're having a bad day, if the parent has consented, we will, may go help them navigate some frustration. If something is going on with a teacher, we may get called in for that.
Is mental health being taught in schools now?
It is a lot more than it has been. Schools really focus on social emotional learning. And so what that is just teaching kids about the importance of self-awareness, social awareness, problem solving, and some other components. But basically it's teaching them how to be in touch with themselves, how to be in touch with the world, and how to navigate problems. And so social emotional learning is a huge thing. Now, I will tell you, I think half of the people that use the word social emotional learning and talk about it have no idea what it actually looks like. But it is becoming a common thing, especially since COVID, because during the shelter in place, there has been a huge uptick in individuals of all ages experiencing mental health issues.
Right. I just always wondered that. I know my kids. I have older kids, so I don't know what the younger kids and what are they doing in the schools now. But I think that needs to be taught, especially like maybe elementary school, before middle school, because kids are growing up faster than say the way we grew up. We actually grade school was grade school, middle school was middle school, high school was high school. You did certain things, but now they see so much more now at a younger age. I just think certain things need to be taught. They need to be aware of like their mental health, because they don't know what it is until there's an actual problem.
I think we are introducing it in schools, but here's the thing: the framework of school has not changed. Like if you think about why schools were created, the structure and the format of schools,
it hadn't changed.
It hadn't changed,
Yeah.
and I think in order for us to really address children's developmental needs, we have to revamp the whole framework of education, because there's a lot of things that are not being taught in schools. We don't learn about finances in schools, right?
True.
We don't learn about a lot of things that are important to our daily living. Like back in the day, you even used to be able to learn trades, although that's kind of returning back.
They had certain trades.
Yeah, but art, home economics, shop, a lot of those things. I remember taking shop. I learned to cook in school.
Yeah,
I learned
taking it too.
Working with wood. Like you learned things that were tangible skills for even just maintaining your home. We don't teach kids those things anymore. They don't even teach them how to write in cursive. So they don't have a signature anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
I was talking to my son about that. I was like, sign your name in cursive. He didn't know how to do it.
It's not a thing. I actually had to teach my kids how to, I used to do that over the summer when they were little, print out these worksheets offline just so that they would at least know be able to, have a signature when they got older.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you wanted to share about yourself, or you got any questions for me? You want to talk about your business, anything?
Well, I want to just kind of talk to you a little bit more, because you said that you realized after your dad died that it significantly changed you, right?
Right.
So what's something that really pushed you to say, hey, I'm not okay, I need help? What was the defining moment for you?
It was actually the day of his funeral. Like I had a real bad nosebleed. Didn't know what was going on. So after the funeral and everything, we went to the hospital. My blood pressure was high. And so they got it down and everything. I went home, and I used to smoke weed. And when I smoked weed, I used to be fine. But say a couple weeks after he passed, I tried to smoke. And a lot of people, I've heard people say that smoking actually helps you when you're dealing with certain things as far as like depression or anything. It kind of brings you down. Or maybe it just kind of alleviates the pain for a while or alleviates whatever's going on for a while. But I tried smoking and I just felt weird. I just felt it was like my hands were tingly. I felt hot. I remember it being because he passed in December and it was cold outside, but I just felt like I was burning up. So I used to have to put like ice and stuff over me and, you know, just kind of calm myself down, take cold showers and stuff. And it was just weird. It was like a feeling I couldn't control. It's like my mind was doing one thing, but my body wanted to do something else. So first I thought it was the smoking. I thought it was smoking weed. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna calm down. I took a couple days from smoking. I smoked again, and then it happened again. I couldn't be around people socially. It made me nervous. What else? Things of that nature. So I said, at that point, I feel like, okay, I need to go to the doctor and see what's going on. And I just explained to them everything that had went on, you know, before and when my dad passed, and then afterwards. And they prescribed me medicine. That didn't work at first. Then they prescribed something different, and it worked. I don't know if it worked because of the medication or it's because my mind saying, hey, I got something different and, you know, here it is working. So that was the life-changing thing that happened for me. I mean, I'm still on it now. I take it every day. And I do plan to be on it because I've been on it it's probably been right at a year. And I think my doctor told me she wanted to try to get me off of it after a year, you know, take one of them away, see what happens, and then eventually I should be off of it.
So what other things do you feel like you've changed to help really deal with what you've experienced, like to address the grief of your losing your dad?
I did a little counseling. I don't know how much eating different changes things, but I try to get more sleep. But when my dad passed, it felt like he was the elder. He was the person that I looked up to. And now most of my family members that's here locally, they're younger. So now I feel like there's a lot of pressure on me. I have older kids and stuff. So I hadn't really done a whole lot, but I do have a large amount of stress, you know, trying to manage businesses. And, you know, this is therapy for me, just interviewing people. So that's one of the reasons why I love doing it, you know.
Yeah. But when your dad left, it left a significant loss, right?
It did, definitely.
And one that you're still feeling, right?
Right.
So here's the thing that I think a lot of us discount is that when things like that happen, it creates an opportunity for us to make a different decision, right? And so I lost my dad, and so I can empathize with you because I know how that felt for me. My dad, though, you know, it was a number of years that his health declined. Was your dad's health decline, or was it more sudden?
He was a little sick, but it wasn't like, you know, we didn't think anything would be traumatic, you know. But, you know, he was up in age. My dad was 88 when he passed.
Okay.
So I mean, he lived a long life.
Yeah.
But he wasn't like he was sick. He didn't have any
Major
cancer.
health
No, he didn't have any major health issues.
So my dad had dementia, and so I knew eventually he was gonna pass, and I tried to prepare myself for that, right? But then, of course, you can't prepare yourself as much as you want to for death, right? So that was very hard on me, and I'm a person who I'm not very emotional, and so, but you know, one of the things I realized is maybe about 2 years ago, I decided I was going to be really serious about not only just talking to my clients, but really making some huge changes for myself. I started having like physical pains in my feet. I was still I would have moments where I would grieve the loss of my dad, and I felt like I wasn't really, even though I prepared myself, I really wasn't addressing some of the things that I think I was experiencing, right? And so for me, most of the change that I've experienced in my life has happened over the last year and a half. Like I started doing yoga therapy. I've been a marriage counselor, but I got me an individual therapist. I've always worked out, but I've been serious about like just prioritizing my self-care and my mental health. I don't have any health issues. You know, high blood pressure runs in my family, diabetes runs in my family. My siblings all take medication. They all have things. I'm the only one out of my sibling group that doesn't have the same thing. But I became really intentional about, I don't want to be on medicine. I also want to feel good and I want to be happy. Right? That's the thing. And so I really just got serious about doing this work with myself. Like, what makes me happy? What do I really enjoy in life? What are some things about me that I feel like cause stress or disrupt the relationships in my life? And so I became very intentional about doing the hard work. It's hard.
Right.
But I will tell you, if you're going to get off medication, if you haven't really processed that loss and, you know, the stress that comes from the loss, then you can find yourself just making a U-turn or, you know, coming back to the same place. And so I think it's important to really process that loss and what void it left behind. I had another client I was talking to about, she lost her dad at a young age, and we were having a conversation. She just broke down because we were talking about a current relationship and how that she was having issues in that relationship because that person was upset about the relationship she had with her baby daddy. And she just started crying because my statement to her was, well, I don't see an issue there because it sounds like you're creating very clear boundaries to protect this parent-child relationship your child has with his father. And she just lost it. I wasn't really talking about her.
Right.
And she just talked about how it reminded her of what she didn't have, right? That's what it really looks like to do some work, to realize there's sometimes some triggers or some blind spots where we actually are holding hurt that we don't even realize until you start doing that deep processing, right? And so with your dad's death being so fresh and with you having to go on medication, with you experiencing those other things, it's really important that you really take a step back and saying, do I really think I feel better? And have I made the significant changes so that I don't ever get to this point again? Have I really been intentional about looking at my diet? Have I really been intentional about exercising? Because I mean, so many people in the Black community have high blood pressure. It ain't all because of what we eat.
Yeah, I'm on it now. Yeah. I mean, all of it happened at once, like high blood pressure, the anxiety, the panic attacks, everything just happened. Like my life changed that one day. Like everything just hit me.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
You know, and I just felt like it was just trauma and I was grieving, you know. But I still feel like I'm grieving now. You know, I don't cry every day, but I think about them. And, you know, my mom passed probably 14 years ago, something like that. Yeah, like 14 years ago.
Yeah.
Now that hit me hard, but, you know, those were my two elders. So I kind of looked up to them. And if I ever needed to call for some advice, that would be who I would call, you know, one of the two, or visit, you know.
Well, grief is funny. It's gonna hit you. You, like you said, even with your mom being passed 14 years ago, there's moments where you had these moments, I imagine still, where it's just like, dang, I would have called my mama about this, or I'm wishing I could call my mom, right? So even in the positive moments, grief shows up. Even in our joy, you know what I'm saying?
But you know what I make positive out of it? So I have a clothing boutique. I opened the boutique on my mom's birthday. So every year it kind of motivates me to go hard. Every day I do something on that day. This I opened on my birthday, but I'm working on doing something like for my dad's birthday. To me, that motivates me. I don't know if it's helping the grieving part, you know what I'm saying? Because I have to, you know, I use those days to kind of like, okay, this is what I'm doing it for. You know what I mean?
It's the intentionality behind it.
Right.
It's your way of making a connection with your loss or staying connected to someone that's significant to you. And that's healthy. And you're not doing it through smoking or drinking or sex or gambling, right? So it makes it healthy when you say, I'm going to take this as a way to commemorate this person or to stay connected to them. That helps me feel grounded. So in your own way, that's what you're doing. You're processing your grief. But I think many people don't do that. So I applaud you for doing that, because that's really important.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to come and talk
Hey.
to you about mental health.
I appreciate you sitting down and educating us and talking to, you know, the audience and everything. You know, I think people are really going to be in the comments on this one, you know, because
Yeah.
you gave some great insight. You know, you educated me a lot on it. So
Yeah.
I really thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
sir.
Miss Tiffany.
It's been nice
Thank
here.
you.
It's a whole vibe here.
Right. I appreciate that so much.
No problem.
All right.